Okay, welcome everyone. So this is a first run with component theming. And I like to begin my talks with the FAQ section at the beginning. So instead of at the end. So I want to know why it is that you picked this talk to come to in this time slot. So what is it that you're hoping to learn about or hoping that I'm going to talk about today? Go. Shout it out. Really serious, yes.
So just theming in general.
Theming in general?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
Especially from a 7 to 8.
Okay. Okay. Very good.
Seeing what things to avoid.
What things to avoid within component theming?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do my best. Okay.
So our university is rolling out a component theme for Drupal, and so trying to see how to effectively integrate that and help develop it.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Trey had a really good point. Just so that I'm being clear, and I'm really glad you brought this up because I hadn't even put this through in my head. We're not talking about web components, the idea of web components in this talk, but we're talking about component theming with CSS and how to create markups so that you can create a predictable rollout structure. So that sounds like what it is that you're working on, right? Excellent, very good. Anything else? Any other ideas or thoughts? Anything you're hoping that I will or will not talk about? Yes?
I'm a fan of the idea of finding something cool that's already up there.
Yeah.
Plugging it in.
Yes, something cool that's already out there. This is, I ruthlessly copy with no qualms about doing that, right? So that's part of the reason why I love Drupal, because I can stand on the backs of people who are much smarter than I am and get a lot of visual functionality. Yeah.
What an open source guy.
What an open source, thank you very much. Yeah. And I hope that by being able to get back into it here, I can smooth out some of the bumps for you all that I've run into as well. What?
I guess one question that when you say component theming, do you mean going out and finding components that are already out there?
It's a good question.
Or is this something specific that means something when you say component?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So there are components that are already built out there. This won't be that at all. This is building your own system level of thinking to be able to roll out your own designs in a way that's predictable and helps to avoid some of the problems that we run into when we're only doing things in Photoshop. So does that help?
So when you say component, what does that mean? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Does that mean grabbing a bootstrap component in?
Right.
Is that what you mean by component theming?
Kind of. Let's hold your question to the end, and hopefully I can answer that. And then the parts that I haven't, we'll come back to. Because that's really the question that I'm trying to answer in this. Right? That's great. Thank you. Your $20 is in the mail. I appreciate that. I appreciate the setup. So just so you all know, there's a recording of this talk that I did a couple of months ago. There's a link on it. The slides that are linked right there are these slides. I'm just running them locally in my own environment. And you can download the entire theme. Thank you very much. You can download the entire theme as well. I packaged them up all on GitHub along with these slides. So the point here is that you don't have to furiously copy down code samples that I have. The goal here for me is to be able to communicate with you the ideas that I went through the first time that I built a component theme for my own project. And then you guys can then take those ideas and take this work and then go and then build your own ideas on top of it, right? So the question, this is what I'm trying to do today, which is I built one component theme. And I built it for myself. And I found the process to be very rewarding and very worth the struggle. And so what I want to do today is to help kind of pull on. This is an advanced concept, but I'm hoping I can make it so that it's beneficial for people who are new to component theming. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to smooth out some of the bumps for you that I ran into, so that way you can run into your own bumps and then blog about so I can learn about what you guys do too. Okay? So a little bit about me. My name is Levi Sigler. I am an independent person. I work for myself. I guess we're all independent people, right? But I work with, I do my own company, my own thing. I've had a couple other jobs in the past where I didn't do that. So I've had a wide experience of various different setups. You can find me on Drupal.org, and then you can also find me on Twitter as well. So why listen to what I have to say? Well, the most important thing for me that I want to share is that I don't believe that there is one true way to do component meeting. What I found is a way that works for me and something that set me up to be able to learn more hopefully in the future as well. So what I want to do is just share some of the ideas that work for me, so that we can try to answer that question of what is a component, what is a component. So we're going to walk through a project that I did for myself. And so I was the developer and I was the client, which led to some pretty interesting client meetings and conversations. But nonetheless, I want to go through the project so you can understand what the goals were that I was trying to accomplish whenever I was walking through the process. So the number one goal that I had whenever I wanted to do this project was to build a system whereby I was improving the design in the browser and not with Photoshop on top. And this is the number one driver that pushed me towards component meeting and combining that with Photoshop. So, in my opinion,
So you're trying to do live prototyping?
I'm sorry?
Live prototyping, where you're just putting out content blocks generated by the software and manipulating this?
A little bit. So we're going to take a look at that first work we built. We built like stub content into a pattern lab, and then we'll be able to take those patterns and pull them into Drupal and Rail and do live content. Yeah, and we'll absolutely walk through some of those. But that's exactly the idea: is to be able to use real content that I'm generating for myself, and to be able to improve the design in the browser. And so this is my soapbox for a couple of minutes about why I believe that Photoshop mockups should not be the final client deliverable for within the process. I'm not arguing that Photoshop should not be used ever. I'm saying it's not the thing that we should put in front of our clients. And so in my opinion, the Photoshop design to put in front of the clients for final approval really does a disservice to three distinct groups of people. The first group that it does a disservice to are the designers themselves. And the reason why is because Photoshop does not allow us to explore all of the different variations that responsive design makes us take into account for it. And so really I think it's too much of a challenge to be able to try to come up with all of those variables inside your head and to be able to account for those in Photoshop. So I really think that it limits the exploration and design process that needs to go through. The second group, who I think it does a disservice to as a final deliverable, again, is that it is for the front-end development team. When they go to build out the design, assuming that they aren't the same person as the designer, and they very well could be, but when they go through the process of actually building that out, all that variability that we didn't explore in the initial design process is going to get explored. And chances are quite good that the front-end developer is going to have to make some decisions, especially design decisions, and they might not line up with what the design team or the design person had intended. And so I really feel that puts the front-end developer in a position where it lowers collaboration between the design and the front-end team. And I think that really can put some strain in between groups of people. That's certainly something that I experienced as a front-end developer, where I had to make decisions, and it did not go over well, and probably shouldn't, because I'm not necessarily I'm not a designer, right? So what we want to do is build a system where we're increasing the collaboration and finding out where those points are that we can actually get through it and make solid systems. But finally, there's a third group, and I think this is the most important group that it gets a disservice by only using Photoshop as the final client deliverable, and that is the client themselves. So, a question for you, and who in here has bought a house? Right? Cool. Anybody bought a car? Bought a bicycle? Right? What did you do with all three of those things? Assuming you bought all three, but if you bought one of them, what was the thing that you did right before you decided to buy?
Look at options.
Yeah, look at options. Absolutely. So you researched it online, right? Took a look at what was available. What else did you do?
Tested it out.
So again,
Tested it out.
tested it out, exactly. That's the one, right? So none of us would be okay if we walk into a dealership or we walk into a used car place, because that's where I get my cars. I get them used, right? And someone walked up and said, "Here's a picture of the car." No, trust me, it's totally gonna work for this. It's good. No, it has a good handling. It's gonna be all right? Like, no, we want to actually be able to touch the thing, be able to test it, squeeze it, see how it actually works. Does it really fit with us? It might be a great car, it just might not be the best car for me, right? So absolutely, we want to be able to give clients the ability to test drive their websites, a mock-up of their website in a browser so that they can really interact with it. And they can also then get to test drive, as the gentleman here in the front said, their real content. See how their real content actually shows up in a design, because it's really when you get that real content, that's when you find out where the design works and where the design still needs to be tweaked. So, all right, off my soapbox, we're going to keep on doing, we're going to keep on going forward. So these are just some of the things that I think that Photoshop can't do that a website can do. And I'm sure that you guys can come up with some other ones. So my next goal was to have a front-end style guide that was perfectly in sync with production. What I wanted to have here are two systems that are separate but work together. The first is a front-end style guide that will show us what our design system is going to look like with real content. And then the next thing is have that front-end style guide pipe into Drupal 8 and be able to really drive the design of the Drupal 8 system. So this is a quick look at how I set it up. I'm using a thing called Pattern Lab Starter. We'll go into the link in a little bit. But in short, what we have is a Drupal theme. Okay? We have a Drupal theme. So if you cite all themes, but in Drupal 8, it would just be at the top, it would be /theme/ and then your theme name. In my case, it's Kochek, because I name every single theme I name after my name. Okay? So all of them are named Kochek. And then inside of here, you have a source folder. So that's where the Pattern Lab system lives. You have a templates folder, which is what we're used to, which is Drupal templates folder. And then desk. And what happens is when you run Pattern Lab, it generates all of the CSS and all of the JavaScript, and it drops it into this desk folder. And desk is what is shared in between the two systems. So desk is where you get your final generated CSS. And then you also have your theme name line. Okay? So that's the high level. There are so many other files and things happening that this Pattern Lab Starter has built out for us. But this is the high level. The idea being that you have Drupal theme, but then you also have Pattern Lab sitting in beside it. At least that's how I decided to take it.
That backwards? Info.yaml?
It very well could be, and I am accepting pull requests for these slides on GitHub. All right, so and then my final goal was to publish the front-end style guide publicly because I want to be able to show it to my clients that I mentioned. All right, so how are we going to do all this stuff? We're going to do it with component theme. So the question is why component theme at all? Like, this is going to be a lot of work. Clearly, this is different than how we've ever done it in the past. Why even bother to go through that level of effort? It's kind of like that for anyone who's in the testing one before. We heard the story about the testing added 3 months, but then it saved 5 on the second round, right? It's kind of the same idea. We're going to go through a lot of work on the front end, but then we're hopefully going to be able to reap the rewards of that. All right. So why do we want to do this? Well, we want to make changes to exactly the part of the site that you want, and you want to be able to roll those out in consistent manner. It's kind of like functionality. I want to make a module that just does the thing. I want to make sure that I'm not introducing changes to other parts of the system somewhere else. Same idea with CSS markup. This is my favorite CSS joke, which is two CSS properties walking to a bar, and the bar's filling with water all over, right? Like we've all done this, where we've made changes to the size of the text in the footer, and we realized that everything in the header moved over, and now like that thing that was supposed to line up doesn't, it's dropped below, and it's just frustrating, right? So this is the idea that the component theme tries to solve, which is to make small, different components that we can then roll out in a consistent and predictable manner. So kind of like little Lego bricks, and we're going to build everything up. All right. So what is component theming? This is where I hope to answer that question. So it's bundles of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript that are on the site and made consistent and predictable. These are small little things that you can move around the site, and we're going to know that thing is a compartmentalized little modular widget, and that thing is always going to stay the same. We might intentionally introduce variability into that system, but we've done it intentionally, so it still remains the same in that it lines up with how we wanted it to work. Right? So let's take a look at an example. We're going to walk through, hopefully if we have enough time, we're going to walk through 3 different examples on my site right now, and we're going to, each one is going to increase a little bit in complexity. So, but before we do that, I want to start with what gets generated at the very, very end of this process, and then we'll know kind of what we're going for, and then we're going to come back to the beginning and walk and see how we get to that final process, that final little widget. So this is a code widget that sits on my site, and sorry, code component. This is on my site. And so you can ignore the part where it says the code and put the code below in my themes. That's just part of the screenshot. That's just the regular text. It's part of the content of that blog post. But the code widget by itself is this little gray box, and then the description there at the bottom. And there's a little bit of styling that's off, and that's because of the resolution, and that's okay. All right. So that's the extent of this widget. And so I want to know that every time that I want to give a demo to my audience of, I don't know, maybe 2 people read the site, whatever, right? But I want to know that every time that someone looks at a code example, that they're going to see it look exactly like this. This is how I want it to work out. So let's take a look at the final generated code for this component. This is what the browser sees. So I have a figure, and I give it a class of paragraphs-code. And then inside of it, I have 2 items, which is a paragraphs-code __ code. And then I have another one that's __ caption. And we're going to get into this in a little bit, but this is the that naming structure, which is block, element, and modifier. So we have our block here, which is paragraphs code, and then 2 elements inside of it. We'll talk about modifiers. So the idea being here that we have namespace our widget. Whenever we actually, let's take a look at the final generated CSS, and you'll see that the CSS here is very, very flat. Okay? It isn't a high level. It doesn't say sidebar first, and then this item, or content main, and then this item. It makes no assumptions about anything other than what's inside of itself. This is the idea of a component that I'm hoping to get across. So it's very, very flat. You'll see tons and tons of the CSS on my site that doesn't go more than a selector. And so this is how it generates down. Let me scroll down a little bit so we can take a look at a little bit more of the final generated CSS. You'll see that even the items inside of it here are still very, very flat. We're going to take a look at how to generate this in a very automated way. Cool. And there's no JavaScript for this widget. In fact, for all of the modules, all of the components that we're going to take a look at today, there's no JavaScript at all. I didn't need JavaScript in this instance. So that's one of the things, if you're hoping for JavaScript, you can find inside apologize. But I don't, that's part of the program. So, all right. So quick break number 1. And again, my goal here was to smooth out the bumps for anyone who wants to get into that first component project. So I want to take a look at buzzwords and terminology because I introduced a few things. I just want to make sure that I cover them so I don't make any assumptions. So a front-end style guide. The front-end style guide is my argument. This is what we're going to put in front of the client. It's also the thing that's going to drive the style of the site. But it's the thing that I'm making the argument that I'm replacing Photoshop mockups for and putting this in front of a client instead. And we're going to take a look at a generated front-end style guide here in a minute. And then pattern lab and atomic design. So pattern lab and atomic design are the tools that I chose to use to implement a front-end style guide and to be able to drive how my site works. There are others to choose from, and I'm not arguing that this is the best one. You all immediately, this isn't the WordPress and Drupal argument, right? Like there's the right tool for everything, and this is the tool that I chose. Okay. So first component, we're going to go back to that code widget, and we're going to build this. And I'm going to give you the steps that I chose to walk through for building out this component. We're going to walk through these steps, hopefully 3 times if we have enough time. So step number 1 is to understand that there is a need for a component, and this really involves system level thinking. So whenever we were going back to the whole Photoshop thing, is that a lot of times when we would get a Photoshop prompt, it would be designing an entire page, right? Here what we're doing is we're designing systems. We're designing small little pieces that fit together to then build out a page, and we will take a look at a page in its entirety. And you might realize once you do that you then need to make tweaks to some of your components because they don't fit together quite well. But nonetheless, we're still thinking about small modular systems to be able to do that. So if we walk back and take a look at this guy, to take a look at this, what are the parts of this component? What are the 2 pieces of this system we need to build? Yeah, okay. Okay, so speaking, I might be Yep, you're right. We're going to build the template file. We're going to get to that. Yep, absolutely. Within this component, what's the functionality that the end person receives?
You've got a default styling for the top and bottom matter, and then you've got specific code styling that fits inside the code component.
Yep. So within this, we have two pieces. We have the code content, and we have the caption at the bottom, and then we have styling that goes along with it exactly. So this component is comprised of two pieces. It's just the code, and then it's also the caption at the bottom of that piece. That's the entirety of our widget. It's just two pieces. So that's our system, just those two pieces. So we're going to create the component in Pattern Lab. And here's where we're gonna take a moment to take a look at Pattern Lab spun up. So I have Pattern Lab up and running on my own site, and we'll take a look at this. Pattern Lab is really cool. There, in that it breaks things down into tiny pieces and then builds them all back up together. So you get tons of little things that you're working on. You can work on the text individually. You can see what are all the different types of typography that you've decided to use. You're going to be able to see font sizes and see how those all fit together. Headings, what they all take a look like. So we're breaking things down into their tiniest pieces and then put them all back together. So in this case, what we're doing is we're going to take a look at the code example. So I'm going to go ahead, and this is paragraphs code, and this is it. These are the two pieces. I have a little piece of content for the code, and I have a little bit of a caption at the bottom. And slightly here you can see on the left-hand side, there's a little bit of orange. And then even I can go ahead and drop that into an example. And you'll see here that it flows into an example page for a piece of writing content. So this is this one tiny component, two pieces. And then so we've mocked it up. We've played with it in Pattern Lab. Let me show you one thing that's really cool in Pattern Lab. Two things I want to show you really quickly, which is the first is, so you can do this what's called disco mode, and now you can start to test how does this component react whenever it gets shrunk and pushed around, and it'll just do this randomly for you, which is a ton of fun. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention is that Pattern Lab will give you a URL, and if you're on the local network, you can then you might actually even be able to fire up the URL if you're on your own machine, and you be able to take that network address and be able to look at it on my site. And what's interesting is that you can have a mobile device sitting right beside your desktop. When you drive your desktop, it updates your mobile device. So you can have a whole slew of different sized technology in front of you at the same time and be testing them all at the same time. Go to a different page, they're all updated. It's really neat. So, all right, enough about Pattern Lab. So we've built our component. We have it in the site. So we built that component in Pattern Lab. We haven't thought about implementing it in Drupal yet. We just have it built out with Twig and with CSS. So these are the parts of what a component looks like in Pattern Lab. So you have a Twig file, and that Twig file is what generates the HTML. You have an SCSS file or a Sass file. We're going to take a look at both of these here in a second, and that compiles over to CSS. So you have a bunch of different SCSS files, each one that lives right beside its component, and then all those get pulled up in together to be shared in that desk folder that we looked at earlier. Sorry. A JSON file which provides sample content to the component itself. And then you have a markdown file for usage documentation, how to make sure it's, if you're passing off your Pattern Lab off to an implementation team, they need to know how to be able to implement. And then a JavaScript file, which again, we said I don't have any JavaScript on my components today. So if Pattern Lab Starter makes it really easy. That's the URL to Pattern Lab Starter. Pattern Lab Starter is a starting point to be able to build a Drupal page with Pattern Lab. There are other companies who are doing their own Pattern Lab Starter type toolkits. So I definitely say take a look. This was the one that was available last year whenever I did this. So take a look. I know there's some other companies, other Drupal shops that are building their own. So try them out and see how they work for you. And if you're interested in going down this road.
I like this one.
It's been great for me, but I haven't tested the other ones. I'm excited to get out and test those other ones too to see. I have no problem switching tools when I decide to said that they were.
Obviously, it's not broken, you're still there.
Yeah, it's still working. It's still working. So npm run new, you can run this command and it'll help you spin up a new component pretty quickly. So what does the twig markup looks like? Well, here you'll see we have the paragraphs code, and then we have inside of it we have dash the code element inside and the caption element inside, and you'll see that we give little placeholders here. And so what we need to do now is over in Drupal pass the data for those into these components. So that's the twig markup.
Can you go back?
Sure.
That element features,
Yeah. This guy right here.
that tweak and stuff?
Yep. So what that's saying is that if you, maybe in this case, it really wouldn't ever make sense for it not to be a figure. This was one of the things that I just, Pattern Lab starter did, and I went, okay, that kind of looks smart, right? But I don't pass an element, but you might want to be able to say, I want it to be wrapped in a div, or I want it to be, in this case, you wouldn't because you have fig caption, but in your other components, you might need to be able to make that, introduce that variability, right? Okay. So here's the Sass file, and so you have paragraphs-code. And for those of you who are new to Sass, one of the things that I want to show you here is paragraphs-code, because this ampersand lives inside of here. This ampersand is then replaced whenever it all gets compiled with paragraphs-code. So that's how I end up namespacing everything and being able to just change it up here, and it'll flow through whenever it gets compiled. So that's the Sass file. JSON file, which gives you the sample content for that component. And then test the pattern in the browser. We already did this. We took a look at it right here. We took a look at this one. We tested it. We can resize it, see how the thing works. I can't tell you how helpful this was for me to just look at one component and realize where it breaks, and then go back and change it, and just change it here and not worry about in Drupal.
So you said breakpoints by component instead of by generator.
So that's going back to the, let me see.
Find where it breaks, you put it in the breakpoint.
Right here. Define where it breaks and then put in a breakpoint if I need. Yes, right? So I'm still defining my breakpoints are still global. So all of my components share the same breakpoints. But if I'm in, and generally I'll end up doing this more kind of on that giant page level, where I'll decide like, okay, here's where my content breaks. But I think what you're asking, or at least what I'm gonna turn it to, is that I very much subscribe to the idea of there aren't a predefined set of breakpoints. It's slide your content around where it breaks. That's where you need a breakpoint, right? So and everybody's content is going to be different, which is why, in my opinion, everybody's components are probably going to be different too. All right.
If I was taking that to, you would actually set your breakpoint to the component at the component level. This component breaks here, so therefore it only needs this one breakpoint, and it's different than what my universal page breakpoints are.
So I think you're talking about element queries, right?
I've got a component that's going to be percentages of something.
Right. Yeah. No, I have.
It breaks at so many.
Yeah.
So many pixels wide.
Right. I think the.
Are you going to find the parent breakpoint and try to use the closest parent one?
Yeah, pretty much. Or I'll introduce a new global one. Right now, I'm only using global breakpoints. But yeah, I think that once element queries really become supported and we can do per component breakpoints, that's going to be amazing, and that's really going to improve a lot of stuff. And to be fair, my content here is fairly simple, so I haven't had a big need for like really localized breakpoints. But yeah, I would love to see that happen. Test the pattern in the browser. So we just did this. Build the functionality in Drupal. So in my case, I'm using a module called Paragraphs. And Paragraphs gives the content editors the ability to introduce small widgets of their own. And those are going to line up with my components. The advantage is that I, as a front-end person, get to control all the markup and styling for each one of those paragraphs, whereas the content person gets to control all of the content. So we're not doing like the giant body field where we insert things and tell people you have to add this CSS class to make the thing work, and that we're not doing that anymore. We're controlling all of the markup ourselves. All right, so let me go back to what this looks like in Drupal. And so I'm just going to edit this really quickly. This is an existing post, but running on my local environment.
And what we have is right here, paragraphs code, and here's all the code functionality or code content, and here's all the caption content. And that's it. So we as the front end team are controlling everything else beyond the content. So that's all well and good, but we have to figure out how do we then hook up these two systems so that they are connected. So the primary way to do this is to figure out what's the template name in Drupal. And the way that I found that is certainly the easiest for me is to be able to set up, sorry, I'm demoing it before I've put it on, is Twig debugging templates. And then I put that link in there so that you can take a look at it. What you can do is set your local environment to be able to print out in the markup what are all your Twig templates. Okay. So we'll take a look right here. Here's the begin output, and it'll give you file name suggestions of what you're gonna do. Pull the Twig template into your Drupal theme, and you'll do that by using an embed. So here, this is the Twig template that lives in Drupal, and what we're doing is we are embedding our paragraphs-code.twig from Pattern Lab into Drupal. So now all we're doing is Drupal is essentially just giving data over to Pattern Lab, and then Pattern Lab is giving you the rest of the markup. So the great thing about this is if we ever make changes in Pattern Lab, that is automatically going to flow out into Drupal. And that meets the second goal that I had, which is that perfect sync between the two systems. So let's go through buzzwords and terminology one more time. So paragraphs, it's a Drupal module that allows us to create small little chunks of content. Sass is what's going to generate, it's what gives us the ability to make small little chunks of files, and then all those files get pulled together into one large CSS file that gets generated automatically for us. And it makes the BEM naming structure easier to implement. And BEM is block, element, and modifier. Okay. Twig is the templating engine. It replaces PHP template in Drupal 7. So the quick question for you, can I do Pattern Lab in Drupal 7 then? Yes, no, maybe?
With lots of work.
With lots of work is the correct answer. So you can set up Pattern Lab. You can set up Pattern Lab as an external system. The only issue is you don't get that perfect syncing. You'll have to go in and rebuild all of those templates in PHP template in Drupal 7. Is it worth it? I would still say yes, but it's one of the cool things about Drupal 8 because they both share the Twig templating system that I think makes this a little bit easier. NPM is just how I fire up on the command line. It's just how I fire up the system. I am not a Node.js person by any stretch of the imagination, and I can make it work. So I just wanted to let you know that that barrier is not high. Okay, so I'm looking at the time that we have left, and I know that we're only going to have time to walk through the second component. If you want to take a look at the third component, you can go through the video that I linked to at the beginning where I walked through it. This talk was originally an hour long, so we'll have to cut a little bit of it. So let's walk through the second component. So the second component, these are 3 different examples of what we want to do, or what I wanted to do. So my use case was I wanted to be able to have an image on a site. That is, this is the best example, but you'll see that there's a left, there's a right, and there's a hero. And so in each one, and for this component, you have multiple different pieces. You have the image piece, right? So again, thinking about it system level, you have the image piece, you have the caption that's on the bottom, and you have a byline. And what's a little bit hidden here is that there's also a link to where you can go and view the original image. So that is the system of what we're trying to do. We've identified all the different parts of this component. Okay. So now what we're going to do is go ahead and create the component in Pattern Lab. And I'll show you here again. We have the HTML. I'm sorry, the Twig markup page, and here's where we introduce the modifier. So paragraphs image. What we're going to do is we're going to give the end user the ability to say left, right, or hero, and we're going to pass that to the Twig template using this idea of a style modifier. But everything else in here is similar to what we've already seen. Save with this idea of a block. We'll come back to this block here in a second, but this block was very useful for me for an image. So here's the CSS file, and we're passing. Here's where we say if it's left, I want to float it in a certain direction. If it's right, I want to float it in a certain direction. And JSON file with the example content. And so test the pattern in the browser. So let's go back to Pattern Lab, and we're going to we'll take a look at it really quickly. So paragraphs image, this is kind of hard to see because I don't know if I can scroll it there. So there it jumps. So this is image left. This was an interesting thing. Whenever I was narrow, I realized left and right doesn't matter anymore. It's going to just take up the full width until I get to a certain point, and now it becomes left, aligned to the left. So paragraphs left really only applies to desktop. So again, we define what these variations are whenever we put something actually into a browser and test it. Okay. All right, build the functionality in Drupal. And again, we're going to do this with paragraphs. And I'll show you really quickly what the final paragraph looks like. And the key thing here is it's going to mostly look exactly how you would expect. You have an image, alternative text, the byline, the link, the caption. But here's the key thing. How do we want to give the end user the ability to position something? Do we want a hero, which is the big in the center always, for all sizes, left or right? Okay.
How are you defining the behavior if the image at 100% is smaller than the
Yep, that's a really good question. So you have, that's honestly, I would say that's a level of refinement that I haven't hit yet. Right now, I'm just squeezing it. Yeah. But I am doing responsive image styles on there. Now they're not element specific responsive image styles, right? So they're responsive relative to the browser viewport, right? So if the browser viewport is down to 600.
I'm referring the other direction.
Okay.
That your box is larger than your image, and you don't want to switch pixels.
Oh, I went through breakpoints to make sure that didn't happen.
Because you're picking up the size out of the image and using that, or
I aligned my.
Defined an image width that you're designing.
I made sure that my image widths and my breakpoints lined up.
Okay.
Yep.
So you, the hero left, right? Is that passed in as that style modifier thing in your template? Okay.
Thank you. Your $20 is in there. Cheers.
This kind of clarifies, I was wondering if that was a field or content type in the future position.
Yeah. So what I did was I made a pre-process function. So the question becomes, how do we take that drop down and pass it into Pattern Lab? So pre-process grabs the selected value for that and adds it as a variable. And then what I do is, so we figured out the template name, pull the component twig into the Drupal theme. So what I do then is the style modifier, I pass that then over to Pattern Lab. Did I really need to do that pre-process function? I'm not entirely sure that I needed to. I could have probably just did content and grabbed the field value right here. I got to go in and test that. Again, I'm learning, and I'm happy to say that there's tons more opportunities for application. Yes.
And then with paragraphs, it lets you add two fields per paragraph, right?
Yes.
So each paragraph, they can set what they want it to, right?
Yes. So I create a paragraph for code. I create a paragraph for text. I create a paragraph for image, right? Like I create all these different types of paragraphs. I still need to create one for video because I would really like to be able to say, hey, I gave a talk. Here, watch my video. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like creating like tiny itty-bitty content types. Yep, and then you can put those onto different types of content. And if you want to like take a look at that later together, I'm more than happy to show you because I think paragraphs is really, really cool. Okay. That was the third component. I want to make sure, so we have 7 minutes. I would just highlight two real quick things in the third component. I definitely say take a look at the talk that I did a couple of months ago. You can walk through it. So the third component was just all views. So we have views on the homepage where we have a big one and we have regular, and then we have text only. And so the two things, this is the same set of steps. The difference here, though, is that I decided to use view modes with views instead of view fields. I thought I was going to be using a lot of view fields, and the key thing here is that once I get to it, the key thing here is for the style modifier, I'm hard coding that. So I don't have a use case where the content editor, who also happens to be me, but the content editor doesn't get to decide how the style of the thing looks whenever it's viewed, right? I'm creating an automated list of views on the home page. I'm creating an automated list of blog posts on the blog page. That's defined within the style. So the point is that not only can you give an end user the ability to use different variations of your component, but you can also then hard code them if it makes sense to yourself. The advantage here is that all of these, okay, all three of those different variations still all use exactly the same Twig component. So we're still centralizing everything down into one space. So if I decide that I want to be able to make changes to all of my components, I can go over to Pattern Lab, make that change, and then it's going to roll out to every single thing else. We've still brought it down to one modular piece where we control everything, and we can test it and then push it out in a predictable and consistent manner. So that was my goal to be able to go after. All right. So I think it's important to go over what did I learn, so that way you can learn them now and then learn more things later and not have to spend a couple of months that I did try to figure this out. So the wrong assumption that I had for number one, this goes back to your original content, was that Drupal would be my test area for real content. So I thought that I'd build out all of my components. And if you'll notice, you can go back and take a look at the components that I built, and you'll still see that they're still all lorem ipsum, right? I don't think that I met my goal of being able to demo to a client what the site is actually going to look like, right? Pattern Lab gives you the ability not only to make the small components where you put in dummy content, but also then to be able to in the same way that Drupal just handed off content to these components, and these example pages, we can hand off real content from the client to be able to demo their content in this design in a system, and we still haven't had to touch Drupal yet. And I think we can do this in a very quick and fast way. And quick and fast, it's redundant. But the point is that we can, we can really demo to our clients and give them something real that they can touch and really get some really good feedback pretty quickly. So that's what I would do next time, is I would actually put real content into Pattern Lab way before I ever got started with Drupal. I was lucky in that my other goal was to perfectly sync the two systems, so that when I saw all kinds of things failing in Drupal, I would then run back to Pattern Lab, make a change, push it out, and then it would all get sucked in. So that was good, but you might not be in that system. You might be in an environment where you have Pattern Lab living completely by itself, and then all these other systems are looking at Pattern Lab as its reference source. So you want to make sure to get this stuff right in Pattern Lab. Wrong assumption number two was I wanted to provide every template that Drupal would use. I thought that I was essentially going to make a headless site for Drupal, but make it headless with Twig. It was not realistic. So what I ended up doing was I used that block section. I used blocks a lot. So I created areas where I'm going to rely on my markup and my CSS to control the design, but I might type something that Drupal uses to fill up an entire section. So the image was a really good example. I don't rely on any of the CSS that's coming out of the image module in Drupal as markers for how I'm going to apply styling, but I'm letting Drupal take care of rendering that entire image. And that worked out really well when I switched from the default image rendering system over to and I wanted to try the responsive image module in Drupal 8, and I just make the flip in the field formatter, and then it still just piped right into that area. My third wrong assumption was that I thought I'd be seeing a lot of views with fields, and that's actually how I started, but it turned out for me to be a lot easier to do with view modes within that piece of content. All right, so we'll review really quickly. Approve the design in the browser, not with the Photoshop rendering. I think, yeah, I was able to accomplish that, right? A front-end style guide that's perfectly the same with production. Yeah, because Drupal 8 and Pattern Lab both use Twig, and because they would be able to share their systems, I was able to do that. Is this a requirement for one of your projects? Absolutely not. Pattern Lab or any other front-end style guide you decide to use can live independently, and then you can rebuild that markup in whatever other system you're already using.
Are you pointing Pattern Lab to actually use the files that are inside the context of a local host Drupal installation?
I'm going the other direction, so I'm taking Drupal and I'm pulling the pattern.
Drupal from Pattern Lab. Okay.
Yeah, yep. And then publish the front-end style guide publicly. No, I haven't figured out how to do that, but that's okay. Okay, lots of resources. You can go through the rest of these later. Two highlights I want to make sure to point out is that I'm using component libraries, which is what you need to be able to pull a template file from a directory other than /templates in the theme folder. So Drupal said by default, Drupal says if it's in /templates, I'll read it. If it's not, I won't. You need this module to be able to go walk over into the pattern folder to be able to pull those templates out. And then twig field value is, I was doing this type field value in some of the examples. That's what allows you to be able to just pull that out instead of walking down the array tree. If you've ever done that, it's kind of, it's frustrating. Anyway, I highly recommend this one, this talk, which is twig recipes, because once you get into this, you're going to say, okay, twig, I want you to give me some content. And then you go, twig, right? So it's definitely a learning curve. It took me a long time to figure stuff out. I wish I had had this talk whenever I was learning this. So watch through that talk. It will give you a lot of good cookbook examples. And if you want to learn, you can learn on the theming initiative from Drupal 8. There's a Twig channel. This is a really good place even just to lurk and listen to questions that other people have, because one person has a question and 10 more people, okay, yeah, I have that question too. Okay, so I want to end by saying, thank you for listening, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk here. And if you haven't, any of the people who were in the front at that front table, whenever you walked in, thank them too, because they really worked a lot. I have never seen a camp put together by just a small handful of people and come off as well as this one. So make sure to thank them too. So that's it. So thank you so much, and have an excellent rest of the day. The slides are right here. If you take a look at this guy on GitHub. Yep. The same place as the feedback. Yeah. So the slides link will be available. You can also actually physically walk through the slides on the GitHub IO. You know how it generates images.
Yeah.
And cool. All of the videos are on YouTube, and we post the links to that in general channel on Slack. Perfect.
So also join the Slack channel for the Utah group. And then you can ask questions and ask me questions whenever you go and play with component theming.
How does Pattern Lab work with Drupal libraries?
With Drupal libraries. So you're saying you might want to pull in a JavaScript library to
CSS library.
Right. So let's take a look. Yeah, that is a good question. So let's take a look at.
Well, the library manifest is going to just point straight to the resources.
Why can't I find Adam? Okay. So how do we define the libraries? Yeah, that was a good question. So, yep, you're right. It's backwards. Okay, so the component libraries, what you're going to do is, so essentially each one, whenever you walk through that npm run new, it's going to go through, I believe it's when that happens, or either whenever you run Pattern Lab, it goes through and adds essentially it's adding each one of your components as its own library and then generates them. But this I did not do. I did not write this out. So this is all happening automatically for you. And then .libraries, yeah, there isn't a whole lot going on here. This was just me adding external fonts. Yeah, they all get, Pattern Lab generates those files and drops them in Dest, and then that's how they're shared between the two systems. Yep. Yep.
So the component module allows Drupal's Twig to pull in that Twig stuff?
Yes. Right, exactly. That one required module that I showed there at the end. Yeah, you need that one. It's written by a guy named John Albin who's done a ton of front end stuff on Drupal. Yeah. But yeah, you need that module to be able to do that embed outside of the templates folder. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks, man. I love doing it.